The black sedan pulled up to the hotel entrance, just as the rain started to fall, and Oliver Thornton stepped out onto unfamiliar pavement with the strange feeling that his entire life was about to change in ways he could not yet understand. He had built an empire in manufacturing, turning his grandfather's small metalworking shop in Boston into Thornton Industries, a billion-dollar enterprise that produced precision components for aerospace and automotive companies worldwide. At 34, he had everything most men dreamed of: wealth, power, respect in his industry. But his board of directors had recently acquired a struggling manufacturing facility in Portland, Oregon, and they needed someone they trusted to turn it around. Oliver had volunteered immediately, seeing it as a challenge, something to occupy his mind after 2 years of feeling increasingly hollow despite all his success. The driver, a local man named Marcus who had been hired by the Portland office, grabbed Oliver's luggage from the trunk. "Welcome to Portland, Mr. Thornton. I think you will like it here. Different pace from Boston." Oliver nodded, scanning the rain-soaked streets. "I am counting on different." Over the next few days, Oliver threw himself into understanding the Portland facility's problems. The plant manufactured industrial valves, and years of poor management had left it hemorrhaging money and losing contracts. He spent 12-hour days on the factory floor, talking to workers, reviewing processes, examining the books. The challenges energized him in a way boardroom meetings back home had stopped doing long ago. On his 4th morning in Portland, Marcus picked him up at 6:30 for the drive to the facility. Traffic moved slowly through the drizzle, and as they approached a busy intersection near a cluster of food carts, Marcus suddenly pointed out the window. "See that woman there? The one with the coffee cart on the corner." Oliver followed his gesture and saw her. She stood beneath a white canopy, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing a green apron over jeans and a flannel shirt. Even from a distance, even in the gray morning light, there was something luminous about her. She was laughing with a customer, her whole face lit up with genuine warmth. "That is Aria Davidson," Marcus continued. "She is out here every morning, rain or shine. Makes the best coffee in the city, everyone says. But more than that, she is just good people, you know. Always has a kind word, remembers everyone's name and their usual order. Lost her husband 3 years ago in a car accident. He was only 30. She could have given up, but instead she started that cart, working her way back to living, I think." Oliver found himself staring. The traffic began to move, and the coffee cart disappeared from view, but the image of her smile stayed with him. Throughout the morning, as he reviewed production schedules and met with department heads, he kept thinking about her standing there in the rain, choosing to face the world with that kind of brightness, despite her loss. The next morning, he asked Marcus to take a different route. "Could we go past that coffee cart? I could use a good cup before we get to the facility." Marcus grinned knowingly but said nothing. He pulled the sedan up to the curb near Aria's cart, and Oliver stepped out into the misty morning air. Up close, she was even more striking. Not in a polished magazine cover way, but in something more genuine. Her brown eyes were warm and intelligent, and there was a small scar on her chin that somehow made her more beautiful rather than less. "Good morning," she said, her smile as natural as breathing. "What can I get you?" "Just a black coffee, please." Oliver found himself oddly nervous, which was ridiculous. He negotiated million-dollar contracts without breaking a sweat, coming right up. She poured from a carafe with practiced efficiency. "I have not seen you around here before. New to Portland, temporarily." "Here for work, a year probably." "Well, welcome to the neighborhood." She handed him the cup and their fingers brushed briefly. "I am Aria. Oliver." He took a sip and his eyebrows rose. Marcus had not exaggerated. It was exceptional coffee, rich and perfectly balanced. This is outstanding. Her smile widened with pride. Thank you. I sourced the beans directly from a small farm in Colombia. I actually went there last year to meet the farmers, learn about their process. It makes a difference when you know where things come from, when there is care in every step. They talked for a few more minutes about coffee, about Portland, about nothing in particular. But Oliver felt more present, more himself than he had in months. When he finally got back in the car, Marcus was definitely grinning. Do not say a word, Oliver warned, but he was fighting his own smile. After that, stopping at Aria's cart became a daily ritual. Oliver learned that she had been a graphic designer before her husband Daniel's death, that she had started the coffee cart as a way to be around people during her grief, that she lived in a small house in the Selwood neighborhood with an enormous orange cat named Mango. She learned that Oliver ran a manufacturing company, though he downplayed the scale, that he grew up in Boston, that he had not been home for dinner before 9 in the evening in over 3 years. That is a lot of working and not much living, she observed one morning as she made him his usual black coffee. I am beginning to realize that, he admitted. Their conversations grew longer, deeper. Sometimes there would be a line of other customers and Oliver would wait, not minding the delay. He started timing his departures so he would arrive at her cart during slower periods. They talked about books, music, travel. She had dreamed of seeing Italy. He had been twice for business but had never actually seen anything beyond airport hotels and conference rooms. That is tragic, she declared. You cannot go to Italy and not eat gelato in a piazza or stand in front of a Caravaggio. I suppose I never thought about it that way. You should. Life is short, Oliver, shorter than we think. Trust me on that. There was a shadow in her eyes when she said it, a glimpse of the grief she carried. He wanted to reach across the cart, take her hand, tell her he was starting to understand, that his success felt increasingly meaningless, that talking to her each morning had become the brightest part of his day. But he did not. She was still healing and he was only in Portland temporarily. Still, he found himself thinking about her constantly. During meetings, reviewing reports, lying awake at night in his hotel room. 3 weeks after he arrived in Portland, Oliver implemented the first major changes at the facility. He had identified inefficiencies in the supply chain, outdated equipment that needed replacing, and a quality control process that was letting defective products slip through. But more than technical changes, he focused on the workers. He instituted safety improvements they had been requesting for years. He hired 2 new supervisors from within, promoting people who knew the work. He started having lunch in the break room, learning names, listening to concerns. The transformation did not happen overnight, but he could feel the momentum shifting. Workers who had been demoralized started taking pride in their work again. Production numbers began climbing. A major client who had been threatening to pull their contract agreed to a meeting to discuss renewal. Aria noticed the change in him. You look satisfied, she said one morning as she handed him his coffee. Things going well, they are starting to. It is a good feeling, fixing something broken, making something work the way it should. I know exactly what you mean. Her gaze held his for a long moment, and he wondered if they were still talking about factories and coffee carts or something else entirely. That weekend, Oliver did something he had not done since arriving in Portland. He took a day off. Marcus had mentioned a Saturday market that was famous in the city, and Oliver found himself wandering through it, looking at vendor stalls, watching people. He was standing near a booth selling handmade jewelry when he heard a familiar laugh. Aria stood a few stalls away, examining a display of pottery. She wore jeans and a soft blue sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back. She looked different away from her cart, more relaxed. Before he could overthink it, Oliver walked over, finding anything interesting. He asked. She turned, surprise and pleasure crossing her face. Oliver, I did not expect to see you here. Decided to actually see some of the city I am living in for a year. Seemed like it was time. Good for you. She gestured to the pottery. I am looking for a new planter. I am trying to become one of those people with thriving houseplants, but I keep killing them. I thought maybe a prettier pot would help. I am not sure that is how plant care works. Let me have my delusions. She grinned, and he found himself grinning back. They walked through the market together, falling into the easy conversation they had built over morning coffee. Aria introduced him to her favorite vendors, insisted he try a particular food cart's Korean tacos, which turned out to be incredible. They looked at books, smelled handmade soaps, watched a street musician play guitar. At one point, as they stood listening to the music, Oliver realized he could not remember the last time he had spent a Saturday just wandering, with no agenda, no schedule. It felt foreign and wonderful. Thank you for this, he said quietly. For what? Reminding me there is more to life than work. I think I had forgotten. Aria looked up at him, something shifting in her expression. You are welcome, and thank you for good company. I have not done this in a while either, gone out just for fun. As the afternoon wore on, Oliver found himself not wanting the day to end. When they reached the market's edge, he took a chance. Would you want to get dinner? There is an Italian restaurant near my hotel that is supposed to be good. Aria hesitated, and he could see the conflict in her eyes. Oliver, I should tell you something. I really like spending time with you, but I am not sure I am ready for anything serious. After Daniel died, I kind of closed that part of myself off. It felt safer. I understand, he said, meaning it, and I am only here for a year anyway. But I enjoy your company, and I think you enjoy mine. It does not have to be more complicated than that, just dinner between friends. She studied his face for a moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, yes, I would like that. Dinner was easy and comfortable. They sat in a corner booth and talked for 3 hours, the conversation flowing from topic to topic. Aria told him about meeting Daniel in college, about the 6 years they had together, about how lost she felt after he died. Oliver told her about building his company, about the pressure of living up to his grandfather's legacy, about realizing recently that he had sacrificed his personal life entirely for professional success. You regret it? Aria asked. I am starting to think I might, Oliver admitted. I have money, respect in my industry. But I go home to an empty condo every night. I cannot remember the last real conversation I had with anyone before coming to Portland, before meeting you. Something warm flickered in Aria's eyes. I am glad you are here then, even if it is just for a year. Over the following weeks, they fell into a new pattern. Morning coffee at her cart and then dinners several times a week. Sometimes they cooked at her house, Oliver learning that he actually enjoyed being in a kitchen when it was not just heating up takeout. Aria was a good cook, and her small house was warm and welcoming, full of books and plants that were, despite her claims, actually thriving. Mango the cat approved of Oliver immediately, which Aria said was a significant endorsement. They went hiking in the Columbia River Gorge, the autumn colors brilliant against the gray sky. They visited Powell's Books, where Aria knew the staff and all the best sections. They found a bar that did trivia nights and discovered they made a formidable team. Oliver felt pieces of himself waking up that had been dormant for years. At the factory, the turnaround continued. The major client not only renewed their contract, but expanded it. 2 other companies that had left were in talks to return. The workers started calling Oliver by his first name instead of Mr. Thornton. It felt like a victory. One evening in late October, about 6 weeks after Oliver arrived in Portland, he and Aria were at her house making pasta from scratch. Aria was teaching him how to work the pasta maker, and they were both covered in flour, laughing at their messy attempts. Music played from her speakers, something jazzy and warm. "You are terrible at this," Aria said, examining Oliver's uneven fettuccine. "I am a businessman, not a chef." "Different skill sets." "Excuses, excuses." She bumped her hip against his playfully, and suddenly they were very close. The laughter faded, replaced by something electric and fragile. Oliver could see her pulse beating at her throat, could feel the warmth radiating from her. "Aria," he said softly. "I know we said this was just friendship, but I need you to know I am falling for you. I do not expect anything, and I do not want to push you into something you are not ready for, but I cannot keep pretending I do not feel this." She stared up at him, her eyes wide. "Oliver, I am scared." "What happens in a year when you go back to Boston? What happens if I let myself feel this and then lose you too?" "I do not have all the answers," he admitted. "But I know that what I feel for you is real, more real than anything I have felt in years, maybe ever. And I think you might feel it too." "I do," she whispered. "God help me, I do. I tried not to. I told myself it was too soon, that you were temporary, that I should protect myself. But Oliver, you make me want to live again. Not just survive, but actually live." He cupped her face gently, giving her every opportunity to pull away. She did not. Instead, she rose on her toes and kissed him. It was sweet and tentative at first, then deeper. Oliver felt something slot into place in his chest, a sense of rightness he had not known he was missing when they finally broke apart, both breathing hard. Aria laughed shakily. "Well, that happened. Is it okay that it happened?" "Yes." She smiled, and it was like sunrise. "Yes, it is very okay." They abandoned the pasta making in favor of sitting on her couch, talking late into the night, stealing kisses between words. Mango settled heavily on Oliver's lap, purring like a diesel engine. Everything felt perfect and terrifying at once. The relationship deepened quickly after that. They were not reckless teenagers. They were two adults who had both experienced loss and loneliness and understood the value of connection. Oliver found himself leaving work at reasonable hours so he could have dinner with Aria. She started keeping his favorite tea at her house. They developed private jokes, shared routines. On mornings when the weather was particularly bad, Oliver would show up at her coffee cart with an extra raincoat and insulated boots. "You are spoiling me," she protested. "Good. You deserve to be spoiled." In November, Oliver had to return to Boston for a week for board meetings. He had been dreading it, but Aria encouraged him to go. "It is your company, Oliver. And besides, absence makes the heart grow fonder, right?" Boston felt like visiting a foreign country. His condo was sleek and modern and utterly soulless. The board meetings were productive but exhausting. His social circle consisted of business associates who talked only about money and deals. He missed Aria with an intensity that surprised him. They talked every night, video calls where she showed him Mango's latest antics, and he complained about his father's friends on the board who resisted every innovation. On his last night in Boston, lying in his expensive bed, staring at his expensive ceiling, Oliver made a decision. When he got back to Portland, he asked Aria to meet him at a small park overlooking the city. It was a clear evening, rare for November in Portland, and the lights sparkled below them. "I need to tell you something," Oliver said, taking her hands, "and I want you to hear me out before you respond." Aria looked nervous but nodded. "I have not been entirely honest with you about the scale of my company. When I said I run a manufacturing business, that was true but incomplete. Thornton Industries is a billion-dollar corporation. I am a billionaire, Aria. I downplayed it because I liked that you did not know that you liked me for me, not for my money. And I need you to know that does not change who I am. I am still the same man who makes terrible pasta and is obsessed with your coffee. Aria blinked, processing. A billionaire. You are actually a billionaire. I am. I am sorry I was not more upfront about it. So you could go anywhere, do anything, she said slowly. And you have been spending your evenings making dinner in my tiny kitchen and playing with my cat. Exactly, because that is where I want to be. A smile spread across Aria's face. Okay, I can work with that, as long as you promise it does not change things between us. I do not want fancy gifts or a different life. I like my coffee cart. I like my little house. I would never ask you to change any of that, Oliver said fervently. But I do want to talk about what happens when my year here is up. Because Aria, I have been thinking. The board wanted me here to turn the Portland facility around, and I have done that. It is profitable now, running smoothly. But more than that, I have discovered something. I am a better leader here than I was in Boston. I am more present, more engaged. I actually know my workers' names, understand their lives. And I think that is partly because of you, because of how you have shown me what it means to connect with people authentically. Where are you going with this? Aria asked, hope and fear mingled in her voice. I want to stay in Portland, Oliver said. I want to make this facility my primary base of operations. I can travel to Boston when needed, but I want my life to be here, with you, if you want that too. Tears spilled down Aria's cheeks. You would do that, give up Boston. I am not giving up anything that matters. I am choosing what matters. And you matter, Aria. You matter more than anything else. She kissed him then, fierce and joyful, and Oliver felt a future unfold before him that was so much brighter than the one he had imagined just a few months ago. The holidays came, and Oliver experienced them in a way he never had before. Thanksgiving at Aria's house, with her parents and younger brother visiting from Eugene. Oliver was nervous about meeting them, but Aria's mother hugged him immediately, and her father engaged him in a spirited debate about sports. Her brother, a college student named Ethan, was initially suspicious but warmed up when Oliver showed genuine interest in his environmental science studies. He is good people, Ethan told Aria later, and she beamed. For Christmas, Oliver flew Aria to New York for a long weekend. They stayed at a small boutique hotel, went ice skating at Rockefeller Center, saw a Broadway show, wandered through the Metropolitan Museum of Art. On Christmas Eve, walking through Central Park with snow beginning to fall, Oliver gave her a small box. Inside was a silver necklace with a tiny coffee cup pendant, beautiful in its simplicity. So you always remember where we started, he said. Aria put it on immediately and did not take it off. The new year brought new developments. Oliver officially announced to his board that he was relocating his primary office to Portland. There was resistance from some of the older members, but the Portland facility's turnaround spoke for itself. He hired a strong executive team to manage day-to-day operations in Boston, and began exploring the possibility of acquiring another struggling facility in Seattle to apply the same principles. In February, Aria decided to expand her business. With Oliver's encouragement and her own savings, she leased a small storefront near her cart location and opened a proper coffee shop. She called it Second Cup, a name that reflected both the product and her philosophy of second chances, second acts in life. Oliver helped with the business plan but stayed out of the way otherwise, knowing this needed to be her achievement. The grand opening was on a Saturday in March, exactly 9 months after Oliver had first arrived in Portland. The line stretched around the block. Aria was radiant in her element, greeting customers and pouring drinks and basking in the community support. Oliver watched from a corner table, feeling pride swell in his chest. That night, exhausted and happy, Aria collapsed on her couch with Oliver. Mango sprawled across both their laps. "Thank you for believing in me," Aria said quietly. "I did not do anything. This was all you. You did everything. You helped me remember I could dream, that I could want things again. After Daniel died, I just shut down. I survived, but I did not live. You changed that." Oliver kissed her temple. "You changed me too. I was so focused on success, on building and acquiring and winning, that I forgot what it was all for. You reminded me." As spring arrived in Portland, bringing the famous roses into bloom, Oliver and Aria's relationship deepened further. They had their first real fight, about something stupid neither could remember later, and learned how to navigate conflict. They met each other's extended families. Oliver took Aria to a business gala in Seattle, where she charmed everyone she met while staying utterly herself. Aria dragged Oliver to a music festival, where he discovered he actually enjoyed live concerts when he was not worried about email. In May, almost a year after Oliver had arrived in Portland, they took a trip to Italy. They ate gelato in Piazzas, stood in front of Caravaggio's, wandered through ancient streets at sunset. On their last night, dining at a small restaurant in Rome with a view of the Colosseum, Oliver reached across the table and took Aria's hand. "I love you," he said. "I have loved you since the first morning I saw you smiling at customers in the rain. But I want you to know it is not just love. It is respect and admiration and joy. You make me want to be better. You make me believe in things I had stopped believing in." Aria squeezed his hand, her eyes bright. "I love you too, and I want you to know I am not afraid anymore. For so long after Daniel died, I was terrified of losing someone again, of that kind of pain. But loving you has taught me that being afraid is not living. I choose this. I choose you. I choose us." They flew back to Portland as partners in the deepest sense, ready to build a life together. The second year of Oliver's time in Portland brought even more changes. He and Aria moved in together, choosing a house in the West Hills with a view of the city and enough space for a home office for him, and a test kitchen for her to develop new menu items. Mango approved of the upgrade, particularly the sunny window seats. Second Cup thrived. Aria hired 3 employees and began wholesaling her Colombian coffee beans to other local businesses. She never lost the personal touch that had made her cart special, still knowing regular customers by name, still taking time to ask about their lives. Thornton Industries continued to grow under Oliver's restructured leadership. The Seattle facility acquisition went through, and Oliver applied the lessons learned in Portland. He built a reputation as a CEO who cared about workers as much as profits, and it paid dividends in loyalty and productivity. Business publications started writing articles about his management philosophy. But what mattered most to Oliver was the life he and Aria built together. Sunday morning farmers markets, midweek dinners with friends, hiking trips and movie nights, and lazy mornings reading in bed with Mango purring between them. In October, 2 years after they met, Oliver took Aria back to the spot where he had told her he wanted to stay in Portland. The leaves were changing, the air was crisp, and the city lights sparkled below. "I have been thinking about something," Oliver said, his heart pounding harder than in any business negotiation. "That sounds ominous," Aria teased, but her smile was soft. "I asked you once if you wanted a life with me, and you said yes. Now I want to make it official." He pulled out a small velvet box and opened it to reveal a simple, elegant ring with a single diamond. "Aria Davidson, you saved me. You taught me how to be human again, how to connect, how to love. Will you marry me? Aria's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Yes. Oh my God, yes. Yes, of course I will marry you. Oliver slipped the ring on her finger with shaking hands, and they held each other as the sun set over Portland, the city that had brought them together. They married the following spring in a ceremony that was small and intimate, held in the garden of a historic estate in Portland. Aria's family and Oliver's family, which had flown in from Boston, mingled with friends from the coffee shop and the factory. Marcus, who had inadvertently started everything by pointing out Aria's coffee cart, was one of Oliver's groomsmen. Aria wore a simple lace dress and Oliver's grandmother's pearl earrings, something Oliver had given her the night before. Oliver wore a dark suit and could not stop smiling. When they exchanged vows, Aria promised to keep challenging Oliver to live fully, and Oliver promised to always stop for coffee, no matter how busy life got. I never expected to find this again, Aria said, her voice thick with emotion. After Daniel, I thought my chance at love had passed. But you showed me that life can surprise us, that hearts can heal and grow and make room for new chapters. I love you, Oliver Thornton, and I cannot wait to see what we build together. Oliver cleared his throat, fighting tears. I came to Portland thinking I was just here to fix a broken facility. I had no idea I was actually here to fix myself. You did that, Aria. You reminded me what matters. You made me want to be worthy of your love, and I promise I will spend every day trying to be that man. They kissed as husband and wife while their guests cheered, and for Oliver, it felt like every moment of his life had led to this one, to this woman, to this perfect sense of being exactly where he belonged. The years that followed were rich and full. Second Cup became a Portland institution, and Aria opened a second location. She also started a nonprofit that provided barista training and small business support to people re-entering society after incarceration. Another second chance initiative that combined her business skills with her generous heart. Oliver continued to grow Thornton Industries, but always with the principles he had learned during that first year in Portland. He remained hands-on, spending time at each facility, knowing his workers. The company's reputation for ethical practices and employee satisfaction became as important as its profit margins. 3 years into their marriage, Aria became pregnant. Oliver was terrified and elated in equal measure. They painted a nursery together in their house, arguing cheerfully about colors and themes. Aria insisted on soft greens and yellows, wanting to keep the baby's sex a surprise. Their daughter arrived on a rainy October evening, screaming her displeasure at the world with impressive volume. They named her Claire, and she had Aria's brown eyes and Oliver's stubborn chin. Oliver cried when he held her for the first time, overwhelmed by the fierce love and protectiveness he felt. Fatherhood transformed him again. He started leaving work even earlier, never wanting to miss bedtime. He learned how to change diapers and soothe midnight cries. He read endless picture books in funny voices and got spit up on his expensive suits without caring. Aria watched him with their daughter and fell in love with him all over again. When Claire was 2, they had a son, James, who was quieter but just as determined as his sister. The house filled with toys and laughter and the beautiful chaos of family life. Mango, now an elderly cat, tolerated the children with patient dignity. Oliver's parents, who had initially been skeptical of his move to Portland and his choice to marry someone outside their social circle, became devoted grandparents. They visited often, and Oliver's mother admitted to Aria over coffee one morning that she had never seen her son so happy, so present. "You are good for him," she said. "You brought him back to life." He did the same for me, Aria replied simply. As the children grew, Oliver and Aria made sure to maintain their connection. They still had date nights, still took trips together. They taught Claire and James about hard work and kindness, about building things that mattered and treating people with respect. The children grew up visiting the coffee shop and the factory, understanding that both their parents had worked hard to build something meaningful. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Oliver and Aria returned to Italy, this time with Claire and James in tow. They showed the children the piazzas where they had eaten gelato, the museums where they had wandered hand in hand. In Rome, over dinner with the Colosseum glowing in the distance, their children arguing cheerfully about which pizza was better, Oliver looked at his wife and marveled at the life they had created. "You ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "Saying yes to me, taking on all of this?" Aria laughed, her hand finding his across the table. "Never, not for a single second. You were the second chance I did not know I needed. You gave me everything." "We gave each other everything," Oliver corrected, and it was true. From that first morning when a driver pointed out a woman with a coffee cart, standing in the rain with a smile that could light up the city, to this moment surrounded by the family they had built together, Oliver and Aria had given each other a life neither had imagined possible. They had found love in the midst of loss and transition, had built something real and lasting from a chance encounter and morning coffees. As they flew home to Portland, Claire sleeping against Aria's shoulder and James curled up in Oliver's lap, Oliver looked out at the clouds and felt the deepest satisfaction he had ever known. He had built a successful company, yes, but more importantly, he had built a life. He had found his home, not in a place, but in a person. In a woman who had taught him to slow down, to connect, to live fully and love deeply. And every morning, even after all these years, Oliver still made sure to tell Aria that she made the best coffee he had ever tasted. Not because it was true, though it was, but because he never wanted to forget how it all started. With kindness and warmth, with a smile in the rain, with a woman who had survived grief and chosen to face the world with hope anyway. That was the real miracle. Not the money or the success, or even the beautiful children. It was two people finding each other at exactly the right moment, when they both needed saving, and building a life together that was better than anything either could have created alone. Years continued to pass in that good way, where days were full and time moved both fast and slow. Claire grew into a thoughtful teenager interested in architecture, while James discovered a passion for environmental science like his uncle Ethan. The coffee shops continued to thrive, becoming neighborhood anchors. Thornton Industries expanded internationally, but always with the values Oliver and Aria held dear. They grew older together, gray threading through their hair, laugh lines deepening around their eyes. But the spark between them never dimmed. Oliver still looked at his wife across the dinner table and felt that same surge of love he had felt standing outside her coffee cart years ago. Aria still reached for his hand when they walked, still smiled when he came home, still chose him every single day. On their 20th wedding anniversary, they threw a big party at their house, the same house where they had raised their children. Friends and family filled every room, spilling out into the garden. Marcus was there with his wife, their kids playing with Claire and James. Aria's parents, now retired and living nearby, held court in the living room. Oliver's mother showed off photos of her grandchildren to anyone who would look. As the evening wound down, Oliver found Aria in the kitchen, wrapping up leftover cake. "Remember when you could not keep a plant alive?" He teased, gesturing to the thriving herb garden visible through the window. "Remember when you did not know how to make pasta?" She shot back. "We have learned a lot." "We have." Aria set down the cake and moved into his arms. 20 years. Can you believe it? Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like forever in the best way. I know exactly what you mean. Aria rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Thank you, Oliver, for stopping that morning, for seeing me, for staying. Thank you for teaching me how to live, Oliver replied, kissing the top of her head. For being patient with me while I figured it out, for loving me. They stood there in their kitchen, holding each other as the sounds of their life surrounded them. Children laughing, friends talking, music playing. It was everything Oliver had never known he wanted, everything Aria had been brave enough to hope for again. And it all started with a transfer to a new city, a driver pointing out a coffee cart, and a woman whose smile in the rain had changed everything. Sometimes life gives you exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. Sometimes love shows up when you least expect it, in the form of a morning routine and a really good cup of coffee. Oliver and Aria had found each other, built a life together, and created a love story that proved it is never too late for second chances, for new beginnings, for happiness that feels both earned and like grace. They had decades still ahead of them, decades of love and laughter and the quiet joy of coming home to each other every single day. And every morning, without fail, Oliver still told Aria she made the best coffee in the world. Because she did. But more than that, because he never wanted to take for granted the small moment that had changed everything. The moment when he had stepped out of a car on a rainy morning and walked toward a woman with a smile that promised home, even though he had not known that was what he was looking for. That was their story. Simple in its beginning, profound in its unfolding, and as rich and satisfying as the perfect cup of coffee shared between two people who had found exactly what they needed in each other. It was a story of loss transformed into hope, of loneliness dissolved by connection, of two people brave enough to try again, to trust again, to love again. And they lived it fully, gratefully, joyfully for all the years they were given. Together.